that animal communication session, it truly can be so life-changing for that animal, because getting over that hump sometimes, and then like their medical recovery like suddenly starts speeding up and they're doing so much better.
If you understand animals and their purpose in this world, then it just creates harmony and it creates peace.
Welcome to Season 2 of Seeking Wonder. I'm your host, Dani. This podcast series explores the spiritual connection between humans and dogs and is a companion to my short story, Dog Deities. Dog Deities is about a fictional society where people idolize their dogs, literally. You can learn more about the podcast and read the short story at dogdeities.com. All right, welcome back to the podcast, Seeking Wonder. And this is actually our final podcast episode of Season 2, Spirit Doggies. And so it's our last time talking about intuitive animal communication. And I'm so excited for this interview because when I first planned out the podcast series, I knew a couple of animal communicators from other work I had done, classes I had taken, and so kind of very easily planned out the first couple episodes. But I always left the last episode as maybe a surprise and got connected through a series of different people to an animal sanctuary. And I'm so excited about that because I feel like we really started with like talking about our pets, which is obviously there's a direct connection, but then now we get to think about not only applying this on a grander scale to different kinds of animals, different species, but also we're going to be talking a little bit about not only the end of life, but beyond, and connecting to animals in spirit. So I'd like to introduce our guests. Nora Armbruster is an animal communicator, and Benperlas is one of the founders of an animal sanctuary. And so I'd like to start with you, Maya, and just tell us a little bit about what an animal sanctuary is, as I'm coming from someone who grew up in the suburbs and lived in cities and not that familiar with kind of what that work looks like, how you find animals, how they end up with you. Do they need to be qualified in some way? And what does the work really look like on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, most definitely. I'm happy to be here. So I am the executive director and one of the co-founders of Viva Rescue. We're a 501c3 nonprofit animal sanctuary and just nonprofit organization that focuses on, specifically innovative rescue, rehabilitation, and permanent sanctuary for farmed animals in need. Specifically, we do some domestic work. Specifically, the domestic animals that we work with are usually in natural disasters. Obviously, here in Southern California, we have quite a lot of fires. And so we do a lot of fire work, fire evacuation, placement, things like that. So we will work with, dogs and cats in those environments, as well as throughout neonatal kitten season, work with neonatal kittens as well. But our focus here is on the farmed animals, specifically because they tend to get the short end of the stick when it comes to rescue. So, obviously most people know that there are hundreds and thousands of, domestic animal rescues across our country for dogs and for cats, saving them from our local shelter systems and, all sorts of, other instances where they find themselves needing to be rescued. But there are just as many, or if not more, animals that, are coming from factory farming, coming from the food industries, coming from, ex-lab, abuse cases, neglect cases, cruelty, seizure cases, which, there are not systems set up throughout our country to support that. And so, individual nonprofits have to come in and really fill those gaps in. So what we do is we kind of fill that space of, where you would normally see with dogs and cats, there being systems in place to take those animals in from abuse cases, neglect cases, cruelty cases. There isn't that set up for farm animals. And typically when they go to shelters, they, will often just get euthanized pretty immediately because the shelter does not have the capacity to, really provide that space and that enrichment and that, very intensive care that animal needs. So here at Viva, we focus on horses, and then we focus on goats and sheep. We also do rescue chickens, and we have a couple parrot residents here as well. So those are the main species that we focus on here. Our main focus is in neonatal ruminant intensive care. And so that's, basically in simple terms, baby goats and sheep that come in with really intensive medical problems. They're, like I was saying, there's not that really system set in place for any farmed animals or large animals, but especially when it comes to, the care and the rescue of like baby goats and sheep who come in with broken legs, broken necks, cleft palates, all sorts of, very intensive medical procedures that are needing to be done, very intensive rehabilitation that's needing to be done. And so we kind of, step in there and, fill those gaps in.
Amazing. I think of even with like the child welfare system, there's a system where like if there's a kind of complaint and then someone goes in and checks it out, but it's so much harder with pets. And I would think like even more hard with farms. How does someone find out that an animal is the victim of abuse?
So, it can really happen through, someone seeing a horse that is emaciated as they're driving on their way to work and they call animal control. And, animal control says that they got this call, they go, they check it out. Unfortunately, the laws are not set up to support rescuing farmed animals and large animals from these type of situations. So if a horse has access to food and a small amount of water, no matter how dirty that water is, often they don't even need shelter. They usually won't do anything to protect that horse. And so then what happens is we'll have to come in a lot of times and really create those relationships with the owners and get those animals surrendered and get them into a better situation. So that it's a little bit more nuanced when it comes to like farmed animal and large animal work, because oftentimes with dogs and cats, there's pretty clear laws. Like if an animal is being abused, if an animal is being neglected in, A, B, and C, animal control is going to seize that animal and that's the end of it. And with farmed animals and large animals, oftentimes it's very complex and there's a lot of work that goes into that. So we do rescue, animals from like seizure cases, animal control, neglect, abuse situations. Sometimes the farmers or people who are abusing or neglecting those animals actually call us because they realize they're going to get in trouble and they want to almost get ahead of it to protect themselves, which, our focus is getting that animal to safety. So, we do what we can to, support the animal in those type of situations and things like that. And then we do like a lot of, animals who jumped off of trucks on their way to slaughter and got hurt and needed medical care, needed a sanctuary to go to, and all sorts of situations, in which animals are born with deformities or, different things like that and need wheelchairs and need more intensive care.
Yeah. And so is it a situation where like, do you feel like you're at capacity now? Like if an animal's in need, do you have to kind of check and be like, do we have space? Like, do we have resources? How does that work in terms of like who gets to come in?
Totally. So we are pretty much always at capacity and we have a waiting list that's like hundreds of animals long at all times. Unfortunately, the need is great. And whereas, city and state shelters receive millions of dollars of federal funding, we're a small grassroots nonprofit. So just the resources that we have access to are significantly different than the shelter systems. And so what that, looks like is unfortunately us not being able to help nearly all the calls and emails that we receive. There are always more animals that are in need of our help, and we really have to basically assess it on a system of, what is our, capacity in a few different ways. What is our financial capacity for, what's our medical capacity? What's our, space, like physical space capacity, barn capacity at night, personnel capacity, volunteers in our team. What can we assist with? And so sometimes we have like, oh, here we've got a space, in this special needs chicken coop. So if we get a special needs chicken come in, like, okay, we can help with that. Or like, we haven't had any horse space for a couple of years now because we're at horse max capacity. We haven't had, any of our senior horses pass horses can live well over 30 years. So there's like, certain markers that, it depends on what we can help with. And sometimes if we can't physically help, we do situations where we will rehabilitate an animal and find them a home if that animal does qualify for that type of situation. We work with a lot of partner organizations to try to, find placement when we're not directly able to help. And we have a hotline where people can call. It's a 24/7 hotline and just ask for resources. So if we, directly can't help, we can refer them out to other organizations or just get them, financial support sometimes for, medical situations that come up and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. And it sounds like you have like quite a large team of volunteers and people who are able to come and support.
Amazing volunteer team. We're so grateful for them. We would not be able to, run this organization at the capacity we, can with the budget that we have without our incredible volunteers. We have about 40 weekly volunteers who come here to the sanctuary and all have shifts and, help make the sanctuary what it is, really.
Yeah. So are they doing a lot of like feeding animals, grooming animals? Like what's a volunteer opportunity like for you guys?
Yeah, so we have two different shifts. We have a morning shift and an evening shift. Our morning shift is 3 hours in the morning from 7 to 10 a.m. And our evening shift kind of switches depending on the sunset because our evening chores are always like 2 to 3 hours before sunset. So throughout the seasons, it changes. Right now, it's like 6 to 8 p.m. And volunteers will, come. They go through an orientation process and, get trained how to safely work for them and safely for the animals on our team. And then once they are trained, they'll help with exactly feeding, cleaning, water, cleaning barns. We do a lot of like enrichment activities. So volunteers are always helping with, we make fun, different ice blocks filled with fruit in the summer to keep everyone cool, or putting up cool new scratching posters, things to smell or things to taste, and all sorts of things to kind of keep them enriched, keep them interested and enjoying their lives. Grooming, bathing, all sorts of things like that. And just really also just spending time with them and getting that like one-on-one connection that we find really important here. Is we don't want, any of the animals at the sanctuary to ever feel like they're in a shelter type scenario in which they're not getting all of their needs met. Our focus here is keeping our capacity at a place where we can, provide individualized care to every single animal here at the sanctuary every single day. And that kind of is supposed to look like as if they had their own owner, as if they had their own person. And so that's kind of what we try to create here for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know, from experience being around animals is so therapeutic, and like there's a whole category of like therapy like with horses. So I'm sure it's so positive for the people to come in and work with them. And so what about your personal background? Have you always been an animal person? How did you get into this?
Yeah, pretty much always been an animal person, but when I was a teenager, I got into working with horses and actually originally more with the equine-assisted therapy type of thing. I was, volunteering and then working with kids with disabilities and equine-assisted therapy. And it was super powerful, super incredible work. But I kind of got led into more of the, seeing how much horses desperately needed more support and more resources. I started working at a horse rescue and they did great work, but all the horses were, that they were rescuing were all young and healthy and could be adopted out. And no one was really taking in these senior horses who still had 10, 15 years of life left, but they couldn't, ride, they couldn't do anything for people. And even the rescues were saying, well, it's too expensive to keep them. So everyone's just euthanizing these horses that, could live and need to live in a sanctuary. And so I kind of was very, inspired and moved to create that. And so I originally wanted to start specifically a horse sanctuary. And then we got led into the farmed animals because there was such a great need there as well. And my partner, Callie, created Viva with me from the start. She was originally working in neonatal kitten rescue. And so she, had her background in the neonatal kittens, and I had mine with, the horses. And we kind of really saw a sanctuary where we could really kind of change things around for all sorts of animals.
Definitely. Yeah. And so then I know something that seems maybe a bit unique about what you do is that you also offer kind of the spiritual support, Reiki, and some other things I saw on your website as well.
Mhm.
So what's your background with kind of like the spiritual side of animal communication or connecting with them on that level?
Yeah, totally. So I actually was trained as a body talk practitioner, and did Mindscape, and which kind of goes a little bit into animal communication and things like that as well. And I just did a lot of energy work and all that type of stuff. And it's so important, and I find it very important to have a holistic view on everything in life. But even within the rescue world, like, I don't want to only provide one aspect of their care. I want to provide like everything and be able to meet all of those needs, and not just their physical needs or not just their emotional needs, right? And so while we like really focus on like innovative veterinary care here, and we're all about the like physical care and innovating that care, I'm also really careful to not forget like how important the emotional well-being of every animal is, and to make sure that we're always including like holistic modalities that can support them in those ways, because I just find that so important. And ever since working with Nora and our group that every week meets to visit with an animal here at the sanctuary and get them the support that they need that week, it is truly has been such an asset to the sanctuary, and such an asset to the animals. It's just amazing to see how impactful it can be to have animal communication as like a tool, really, to better support these animals and better help them live their best lives.
Yeah, yeah. And so with communication, it's something where you're able to ask like how can we make you more comfortable, or like maybe like what's an example of something that information wise that you get from them that helps?
Totally. So, it can be a bunch of things. We do behavioral questions in which we're, if we're seeing an animal that's, having a lot of aggression or a lot of anxiety, an animal who's really scared of people or really scared of other animals, or maybe it just isn't getting along with their species. Just last night, we, had a session with one of the newest rescues, Cindy Lou, who is a chicken who was rescued from a local construction site, and all the other chickens were beating her up, and they weren't integrating well, even though she had gone through a slow integration process. And so those type of things can help us a lot with the behavioral. Why aren't you necessarily getting along? Is there anything else we can do to make you feel better? Would you rather not live with, we have a chicken who doesn't live with the chickens, she lives with the sheep because she's decided she wants to be part of the sheep crew and not with our chickens. And so it's really helpful for us to like help them live their best lives, because it's really easy to just like box them into like, okay, well, chickens want this, goats want this, horses need this, and not have individual needs. But like every single animal here and every single animal, I believe, like all over the world, they all have their own needs and wants and personalities and, very specific things to them that really is important to them. And so that's really important to us, that we don't want to just like, box them in, and we want to be like, what else can we do to better support you and to better help you? And then of course it's also super helpful when we're working with like our veterinary team, and at the same time having animal communication through physical rehabilitation, because that's super helpful. Just sometimes if we're hitting a wall, and our vets are like really perplexed as to why we're hitting that wall, sometimes we can get some really amazing insight as to maybe the animal has like a belief system that they don't deserve to get better. And like that animal communication session, it truly can be so life changing for that animal, because getting over that hump sometimes, and then like their medical recovery like suddenly starts speeding up, and they're doing so much better. So it's just, to me, I really find it like 50% physical, physical veterinary care, physical general care, rehabilitation care, etc., and 50% like Reiki, animal communication, other holistic modalities. Like that's so important. Like it's just like the yin yang, it's just like it's really just they fit together so well and they complement each other so well. And I just think without animal communication, I just would find that like all of our residents would just have a harder time, I just think, in general.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can definitely, it resonates so much with me because I adopted Bambi as a senior dog. And so like getting to support a dog through, somewhat difficult medical years, it's just like everything, there's so much going wrong in the world. And it's so inspiring to hear about like how you're like truly caring for these animals, both on like a physical, emotional, and spiritual level.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And so Nora, how did you get involved?
So I have been an animal communicator for a while now, and I was with a practice, or still am with a practice group. We started off as a practice group, and then it kind of grew into more of a service group, and was connected with Maya and Callie, that she was looking for practitioners for workshops at the sanctuary, and kind of came in, kind of got connected in that way, and then really understood the need that Viva had for animal communication. And I was also completing my Reiki Master certification then as well, which came a little bit later, but initially kind of just started off talking to the animals who are in need. And it's still kind of to this day going to the sanctuary every week and say, okay, who am I talking to today? Who needs care? Who needs attention? Whether it's animal communication or Reiki, or just even sitting with an animal and listening to them and understanding them and hearing what they have to say. So that has been, it's been a godsend for the sanctuary as well as for myself. This is like a highlight of my week, every week that I get to talk to these animals and I get to connect with all the animals. And it's just been a wonderful experience getting the feedback from the animals and then seeing the communication working and it's seeing the results of that communication, and whatever the modality is, whether it's Reiki, T-touch, communication, and seeing the results and the changes that we see in the animals based on whatever the offerings that we have for them. It's been an incredible and rewarding, just such a rewarding experience to work with these animals.
Yeah, absolutely. So when working as an animal communicator, do you, aside from the sanctuary, is it mainly like pets, dogs, and cats, or how do you always kind of done a full range?
Yeah. So I've mostly, still to this day, most of my clients have either cats, cats or dogs. Sometimes I have, like I just talked to guinea pig, hamsters, snakes. I've talked to snakes before. They're really cool. But everyone's cool. Like it doesn't matter. It's like they're all souls, right? And then just in this little, snake body. But yeah, it mostly domestic. But then, working with the sanctuary, working especially with the horses, has been just an incredible experience. They're all of the Viva animals, the goats, the sheep, the horses, even the chicken. Maya said, we were talking to Cindy Luhu yesterday, and she was an amazing soul to talk to. Beautiful spirit, and all of them have these beautiful spirits, and that you just learn so much from them, and they have so much wisdom and so much to share. And it's just it's like, I can't believe I do this for a living. It's like the best thing ever.
Yeah, tell me more about that in terms of like when you say wisdom, like what does that mean? And like are there themes, like you were saying snakes are kind of a certain way? Are there kind of themes in terms of like what they have to offer based on species, or is it very much like individual?
Yeah, it's so individual. So and and it's funny because, just because they are a soul here in this body of whatever it is, horse, cow, dog, cat, just because they're in that body, we kind of assume, oh, well, they're going to be kind of like this. But the case is that their soul who has probably had many, many experiences, past life experiences, just like we have. So, and, who knows, someday we'll probably be an animal. So it differs. It really differs. It really depends on that particular soul. And I never know. I never know what I'm gonna get. I never know going in to talk to like a guinea pig. I don't know what that's gonna look like. And I always, especially if I know that particular animal and I have a certain opinion about that animal, and then I talk to that animal, I'm like, whoa, I didn't expect this personality. Either, someone who's a little bit more serious or someone who's just funny and, lighthearted. It just, you never know going into an animal communication reading what it's going to be like. So different species, it just doesn't, at least in my experience, that has not been the case where I can go, dogs are all like this, cats are all like this. They're all so incredibly different.
Yeah. And so for your own backstory, were you
Mhm.
someone who was always intuitive as a child, or did you come into it later? What was kind of like the origin story for you?
It's funny. I've listened to a bunch of animal communicators talk about their stories, and they're kind of all over the place, but a lot say, oh, I was so intuitive as a child. That is not my story. Although I will say this, I've always been connected to animals from a very young age. My very first pet was a hamster named Helen. We got her for Christmas. My mom just decided to name her Helen. We're like, okay, I guess we don't get to name her Helen. All right, Helen. And she was kind of like my best friend. She lived to be about 3 years old, which is pretty good for a hamster. And it was heartbreaking when she passed. And then our next animal was a dog named Samantha. And that's when I was discovered how awesome dogs are. And I'm kind of obsessed with dogs. I'll admit, I love all animals. I'll even take spiders out of my house and put them outside. I'm like, the Reiki ideals, kind of connecting with dogs in that way, and then getting more dogs and more dogs into my adult life. Having dogs, I've had a couple of cats as well, but never thought I was talking to them. So when I was thinking about a career change, I worked with a career coach. And on our very first session, she said, okay, what about, you love animals? What about animal communication? And I said, you have to be psychic for that. Well, little did I know that we are all hardwired for intuition, for psychic ability. And that's when I was like, oh, okay, I kind of still blew it off. And then once I kind of got a little bit further down the road in my discovery of my career change, I decided to look into it, interviewed a bunch of animal communicators, and then boom, that I was like, wow, I can talk to animals. This is the coolest thing ever. And then took a class, started doing it, and I was hooked. I'm like, this is going to be my business. The more my business developed, the more it kind of became more of like a goal of mine to connect with animals to improve their lives, their humans' lives, whether they have humans or not, and just getting to the point where we understand animals more so we can build a better world. Ultimately, my teacher was Kara Gubbins, and she has always said the world needs more animal communicators, and I couldn't agree more. I think if you understand animals and their purpose in this world, then it just creates harmony and it creates peace. So really, and then we were talking about the wisdom that comes from animals. It just, if everyone knew that they are sentient beings and that they are sensitive and have souls just like we do, that would change everything. So we have a lot of work to do in that area.
You might share my opinion that everyone is intuitive. Learning intuitive practices helps me feel more confident making everyday decisions and regulating my emotions. And the online course that I took with Lotus Lantern became a foundation for so many other skills. Reverend Liliana has a compassionate and inclusive teaching style. Follow my affiliate link in the show notes to learn more. I got into meditation because it helped me get past writer's block, but I never had a committed practice until I did meditation teacher training with The Path. Halfway through the 3-month program, I was having vivid cinematic dreams every night, and I could sit cross-legged for 25 minutes without moving. The real reason I love this program is the people that you meet. If you're looking for soul family, try meditation teacher training, and you can find my affiliate link for The Path in the show notes. And finally, if you're ready to manifest your own spirit doggy, you'll want to join the workshop and community called To Be Magnetic. This is not your typical manifestation class, but it's a blend of journal questions and hypnosis meditations that help you to excavate core wounds. And a side effect of doing this work is that you make choices from your true center. So go to the show notes to find my affiliate link for To Be Magnetic, and you'll also get 15% off. And I love how you talked about, kind of the career change. It almost sounds like it sounded too good to be true. And I feel like that's often the case, that, you're afraid to go down a certain path because it sounds too good sometimes. So
yeah. I mean, I'm sure I was, when I was young, I'm sure I was talking to my pets. I just didn't realize I was talking to my pets. And so this is what I like to tell my clients too, the more you practice connecting with your animals, with your pets, the easier it gets, and the easier it comes, and just being open to it and not forcing it and being relaxed. So before I go into an animal communication session, I just get really relaxed. I do some breathing exercises. I'm also I know you're a yoga instructor. I am too. I'm not teaching at the moment, but I do my breathing, my breath work. And so finding almost a meditative state in order to receive those messages.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I think that's something I started to notice. The more that I interviewed animal communicators for this podcast, and then the more I paid attention to my dog Bambi and was like, okay, I do know what she's telling me.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to, well, first I've talked a lot about Bambi on this podcast, and I've talked about her medical condition, and then I had posted on Instagram that she did pass away. I'm not sure I actually said that on the podcast, so I'll just, mention that that is I did lose her. So ended up being very great to have the support of my own podcast to help me through that transition. But something that I wanted to ask you about Reiki and animals is that, especially that last week with Bambi, I really got like the intuitive hit, like do Reiki on her every day. And I had some resistance around it, because I think in my mind, well, first, when I do Reiki on a person, they tell me they feel better at the end. And with Bambi, I wouldn't always notice a difference. And also, I think I had some resistance where I was like, I just don't trust that I'm going to be able to fix this medical condition. Like, it just seems very serious. And so it was almost felt like it was maybe like I just can't fix this, I guess. The very last night that I had with her, as I was doing Reiki, I kind of had this feeling of just like angels surrounding her. And so then I was like, oh, maybe it's like, I've been told like Reiki is physical, emotional, and spiritual. And maybe I'm being asked to do this to help her in the transition. So I'm curious, like, from your perspective, what is that like for that transition? And why is Reiki sometimes something that is recommended?
Oh, and it's interesting that you asked that question, because I've gotten calls at, I don't know, Maya, 11 o'clock at night, midnight sometimes. Nora, we need Reiki for so-and-so because they're we're going to the vets, we're taking them, wherever to get, to receive medical care. And we want that Reiki support, that energy support. And so it's in my mind, the way that I think about Reiki in that kind of situation is that it helps physically, for sure. It helps physically, it helps spiritually, mentally, energetically. It just helps the body and the mind, and allows them to come into this space where they feel supported. And you talked about the angels. I even ask, I'm very woo-woo. I get into, sending Archangel Michael, sending any available angels. I'm always saying that any available angels come in, because they need that support. And if I can ask for that support while I'm giving Reiki, and I even ask my own team, of course, and then I also call in the animals team. So, and if there is an owner to that animal, so let's say if it's not a Viva animal and and if it's a client's, I call in their team as well to help. But as far as the Reiki goes, I just think it's almost like wrapping them in a warm blanket, because of that energy is just hugely supportive. That's the best way that I can describe it. I mean, if you're a human and you know what Reiki is like, and you know how amazing you feel after you come from a Reiki session, imagine being in this, especially for an animal, they can't tell you how they feel. Well, they can tell me, but they can't, you can guess what's going on with them, but you want to be able to give them that ability to feel completely understood, first of all, and to feel just the support of energy. Again, warm blanket. That's the best way I can describe it, and allowing that energy to flow through them and to calm their energy. They might have a very fast heart rate, so allowing the energy to flow through that way. They may not know what's happening. So just having that additional support makes a huge difference in my mind.
Yeah. And I think that's an absolutely perfect description, because I think in that time it's, you see the animal is physically struggling, and you're like, can I pet you? Can I give you a literal blanket? Like, that is the feeling that you want to give them, is like, how do I just, soothe this for you?
And allowing the animals to lead as far as whether they want Reiki or not. That's also, I send it distantly, of course, when Viva is having an emergency situation, but allowing them to choose whether they want it or not. So a lot of times in the past, I would start giving it to them. And then now I'm like, okay, do you want this? And most of the times it's, yeah, let's try it. Sometimes when I go to the sanctuary, just on a regular day, and I'll walk up to some of the horses. I'm like, hey, Willow, would you like some Reiki today? Check back with me in a few minutes. Okay. So they go to another horse. So-and-so, do you want Reiki? Oh yeah, bring it. Okay. So I just kind of follow their lead. I let them lead whether they want it or not. But in that other type of situation, it is animal communication, and Reiki can make a big difference when there's an emergency situation, or if it is during a transition.
Absolutely. And so then something else we had talked about is that you also connect to animals in spirit, or some people call it pet mediumship. So what is that like for you? Is it the same as like, connecting to an animal who's still here? Is it different? Is it harder to find them? What's the experience like?
For me, it's not harder to find them, but I have had the experience where they have even I think, Maya, you might remember, I can't remember which animal it was, but there was a time that I could not connect. Can't remember which animal that was, but I couldn't, this animal had just passed, and he said,
Frank?
yeah, he had just passed, and I couldn't connect, but then gave it a day or maybe half a day, something. I tried to connect later, and then he said, okay, yeah, let's try this. So sometimes it is difficult to connect, or they just are not ready, and they will let me know that. However, most of the time, I will say this, that most of the time they want to connect. I've in my career, I've really have not had very many times where I can't connect with an animal. And again, the timing might not be good. So the feeling of connecting with, talking to an animal who's living versus talking to an animal in spirit, I've never been able to articulate the difference, but there's a difference that I feel because I've talked to, and when I go to events, I'll talk to a bunch of people, and they'll come and talk to me, and then I something's telling me, is this animal living? Oh no, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you, they're in spirit. I'm like, okay, that makes more sense. I don't know why it makes more sense. It's really hard for me to say like, oh yeah, I just get this certain feeling, or I just know. It's like all my senses coming in. It's just a different it's just a different vibe, a different energy. Very subtle though. It might, if I connect with an animal, and I might think they're living, and maybe they're in spirit, maybe the person didn't tell me. And then afterwards, if I find out, then it's like, okay. I get what's happening now. Yeah. So it's just, for me, it's really subtle. It might not be that way for other animal communicators.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So when clients come to connect in spirit, do you find that it helps with the grief process? What is that like? I could see it almost become something where you want it as a crutch to just keep coming back. So how does that go?
So actually I had a client where she was scheduled to get a reading, and then it turned out that she had to take her dog into the vet to be put down. And I was there. She had her phone, and I was talking to him right before the vets came in. And it was, that was interesting. I've never really had that, with the exception of Viva and some of the cases where they have emergencies. That was probably my only client where I've been there during that space, and it was really beautiful. The words that he had to say to her, and afterwards I kept connecting and checking in on her to see how she was doing. And she was talking about getting messages from him. That's a whole other podcast. But yeah, it's I feel like it's just a closure and form of closure, but just very comforting to the pet owner to know that their pet is, especially if they were in pain, that they're feeling better, that they're okay. And probably the most common question is, did I do the right thing? Was it time? And I have never, ever heard from any animal that it was not the right time.
Wow.
That it's always perfect the way it happened. The way it may not be perfect to you, to the human, but the way that it happened, they accept that, the way that it happens, the way that they leave this earth.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And so throughout this podcast season, I've gotten to have animal communicators share a lot about the work they do, specific examples. But what would be really, really cool for everyone listening is to get a behind the scenes of what it's like to actually hear an animal communicator connect. And so what I had asked is if Nora would be open to connecting with Bambi, who just passed on June 17th, so just a couple weeks ago. So if you're ready, we'll dive into it and see what comes up.
All right, I'm ready. Okay, Bambi, here is your, okay. So as I had mentioned before, I connected with her just because I like to do that every so often if I have the opportunity. She was very eager to connect. Um, she has a message for you, Dani. She said, Mom, you're in a really good place. Keep doing what you're doing because people need to understand what is important in the world. Oh my God, that's so sweet. Okay, she's like, wait, I'm not done. She's really, I always get the personality. That's like one of the first things I get. She's super spunky and sassy. I hope that's accurate.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, she wants you to know, she wants you to know the love that you not only provided her, but that that you provide and that you give very selflessly to not just friends, family, anybody who you are personally connected to, but that the world, and how you're doing that through this podcast and getting messages out, not just about animals, but just about your plans. And she's saying that those plans are many. She's saying that you have a lot of ideas and a lot of, she knows what you're up to, because not just being in spirit now, but having had lived with you and being in your presence, she was very aware of what you were doing all the time and your plans. And okay. And she is saying that there was a period where she really wanted you to kind of slow down. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
But she was kind of like, okay, you've taken this a little far. Let's step back and let's kind of take a breath, relax, do your yoga, meditate, and just kind of come back into that workspace, right? But with that said, she thinks of you so highly, and she really does think of you as a bright light in this world, which is, I'm getting emotional now. She's just she has so much respect and love for you. And this is what she wants you to know. And then the words, because I'm very clairvoyant, that's like one of my strongest senses, the words great life came up.
Oh.
So
yeah.
I think she means that you gave her a great life.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's confirming that. She's like, yes, that's it. So just that you did everything right. And so those are her, she's saying she has so much more to say. I would be happy to do that in another reading if you wanted to. Yeah, she's a pistol. She's just a happy girl. Do you have any questions for her that she can answer?
Actually, I mean, my main question, which I was always, especially towards the end, trying to kind of sense into this myself, but it felt like she just dropped in my life at a certain time, redirected the whole thing, and then popped out.
Right.
And like when you said that I'm in a good place, it's like, well, yeah, you like redirected everything, and now I'm in a completely different place. But
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, what her sole purpose is, like, and what, maybe not necessarily just with me, and like, did she feel she completed her work?
Yeah. All right, Bambi, like what was your spiritual purpose or your soul purpose while you were here on this earth? She's saying that's like a long one. Can you abbreviate, please? She's talking about finding This is interesting. Finding the niches, finding a niche or areas in life that really needed her assistance. So I find it really interesting when I ask animals about their spiritual purpose. It's either about their growth or it's about other people's growth. And this seems to be more about other people's growth and how which makes sense. So interesting. It makes sense of what you just told me about her, how she came into your life, turned it upside down. So her purpose is really to come into this life and to affect others in a positive way and to help that growth of other, whether it is, other animals, other, people, and having a positive, I don't think chain reaction is the right term, but just having it's kind of like a snowball effect. How she starts this process of positive change, and it just keeps going on and on and on.
Oh, wow.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to get when you ask about spiritual purpose. It's always amazing.
Yeah, that's incredible. Thank you so much. Yeah, we will definitely have to get some more time, some more time with Bambi.
She's saying, I will tell you the longer version.
Okay. Awesome.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for connecting with her there. And yeah, just to kind of respond a little bit, because you had talked about how she sees me as a bright light, and to give the audience maybe a little more context too, I went from having a full-time salaried job to, working on fiction, working eventually, this podcast, my newsletter, stuff like that. And it's been challenging for me because when I had a salary, I felt like I was validated, like I'm providing some value to the world because I'm getting paid. And so for me to create my own creative projects, which very much arguably are contributing more positively to the world than any job I had, but still can feel like, oh, this is frivolous. This is just me doing something for myself. So some of the words you used about, just being appreciated and bringing light to the world is definitely, with a dog, it was like, well, at least I can make my dog happy. So I felt validated there. But it's a good and really powerful reminder for me to keep doing what I'm doing.
Beautiful. Absolutely. And I get it, as entrepreneurs, we don't get, no one's patting us on the back. We kind of have to do that for ourselves. And hopefully our clients do that for us. But yeah, it's that's a little bit of I've gone through the same experience. It's an adjustment for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, Maya and Nora. This was such a fascinating conversation, and I'm excited to share it with everyone. So if people want to work with you, Nora, do you want to talk about where they can find you? And then Maya, how people can support, volunteer, and everything like that?
Sure. My website is animalwhisperer.love. And so people can find me there. I am also on Instagram, Animal Communication with Nora. That's the official name of my business. And then they can also email me at nora@animalwhisperer.love. Whisperer is hard to, whisperer, kind of hard to pronounce.
Yeah, I'll have it written out in the show notes too.
Okay.
Super. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on here. Love, such an important conversation for sure. I think it's just really important to, keep talking about, how we can support each other, ourselves, and animals with animal communication. It's so important. It's really such a big part of what we do here. And in order to find us, our website is vivaglobalrescue.org. And our Instagram is at Viva Global Rescue, Facebook as well. You can look up Viva Rescue. And, we're super active on Instagram, sharing, the daily lives of all the animals here at the sanctuary. And all of our events can be found on our website as well. We have lots of opportunities to visit if you're in Southern California, for goat yoga, for microgreen growing workshops, for, all sorts of, fun activities, workshops, and, places where you can meet the animals, learn about the work that we do. Obviously, the two most important things that can be super helpful here is both donations as well as volunteering. And so you can get a volunteer application on our website, and you can also make a donation on our website. Same thing on Instagram. We've got all of our links there as well.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone listening for tuning in, and stay tuned for an announcement for when the next season's launching. And I'll see you then. I hope this podcast brings you closer to your furry friends, and if this episode made you think of someone, why not share it with them? You can send the link in a text message, an email, or even put it in an Instagram story. And to help us reach more people with heartwarming and paradigm-shifting stories about animal consciousness, please leave the podcast a 5-star review.